a summary of the Sikha, Likutei Sichos, volume 3, pages 916 to 923. The Rebbe brings what the Gemara in Megillah says, that after we got done with the Gzeira of Haman, the Jewish people experienced the four things. We say this in Havdalah: Oira, Simcha Sasan, and Yikar. In this Sikha, the Rebbe explains the uniqueness of these four things. Don't we have 630 mitzvahs? Why do we why does the Megillah pick out these four things? So the Rebbe goes to explain that these four things are things where seemingly, externally, it looks exactly the same as the way the non-Jews do it. And the Rebbe began with Torah. Says the Gemara, the Eira, the light, is a reference to Torah. And that is, the non-Jews also have, like the Muslims have their Quran and the Christians have their testaments. So seemingly it's exactly the same. Lahavdil. We have a Torah, we have the Jewish Bible, and the non-Jews also have a Bible. And the same thing is with the other ones. And and the Rebbe goes on to the holidays. So we have holidays, and the non-Jews also have holidays. We circumcise, and they circumcise. We put on tefillin, which is a ois. It's like a banner. It's like our flag. And there's many nations that also have their flag and their symbol that they pride themselves with. So the question is, why do we put an emphasis on precisely these things where we do have a similarity with the non-Jews? So the Rebbe goes to explain what's the whole point of a ois, of a sign. When you're driving on the highway, you need a sign to tell you that speed limit is 55, because otherwise you have no idea. You could go 75, you could go 35. So the sign needs to tell you. You should know it's 55. So things that are obvious, where we are different than the non-Jews, you don't need a sign for that. So things that are connected to the soul, spiritual stuff. For example, davening in shul, saying Kaddish, all those spiritual stuff. You don't need to have a ois to show a sign. Oh, we are different than the non-Jews, because it's obvious. Somebody looks at them and says, oh yeah, the Jews do this, and the non-Jews don't do that. Trying to think of something that the non-Jews don't have, that we have. I mean, Chomatay. You don't find a non-Jewish person have Chomatay. So these four things, Eira, Simcha, Sasan, and Yikar, they are a ois. These are things that are we are equal. They're seemingly equal to the Goyim, and yet even in those things we are different. The Rebbe goes to explain by prefacing with a question: how come we say Torah is Oira? It says in the Megillah Oira. It says the Gemara Oira is a reference to Torah. Torah, even though it's written with a hey, but it's masculine. It's lashon zachar. So why are we calling it suddenly Oira? It should be called Oir. Light. You'll never ever see it spelled in Hebrew Oira. It's Oir. Oir is by definition spelled in a masculine form, lashon zachar. So why suddenly is the Megillah changing it and making it that it should look lashon nekeva, feminine? The Rebbe gives a very fascinating explanation that we're speaking about Torah Shebal Peh, the oral Torah. What's that to do with the feminine? The feminine is the recipient. The zachar is the giver, and the nekeva is the recipient. So too, we have the written Torah, Torah Shebiksav, Tanakh, and then we have Torah Shebal Peh, which is a recipient from Torah Shebiksav, because whatever is talked about in Torah Shebal Peh, like Gemara, Shulchan Aruch, is all taken from Torah Shebiksav. So like this. So seemingly, our approach to Torah Shebiksav is with pure faith. Every letter of the Torah, the way it's written in Torah Shebiksav, is precise. We go with the approach of Emunah. But Torah Shebal Peh, that's the area where sadly people over the generations made that mistake. Look, Torah Shebal Peh is something that we could use our intellect, And that's the mistake that the Tzidukim and modern day the Reform movement, they made that mistake where, look, there is an area in Torah where we are allowed and encouraged to use our mind. So I'll just decide, I'll make up whatever makes sense to me. I'll make up whatever law I want. And of course, we don't follow that. As Jews, we say no. Torah Sheba'al Peh is exactly the same holiness as Torah Shebiksav. It's only a technical difference. Where this was written, Moshe Rabbeinu actually wrote it, and Torah Sheba'al Peh is something that Moshe gave over in an oral form. Then the Rebbe goes to explain how a Jew celebrates Yom Tov. And this is where we find the difference between a Jew and a non-Jew, even in those things where seemingly they look the same. The Rebbe starts with the Yom Tov. How do we celebrate a Yom Tov? We do it with holiness, with meaning. How do the non-Jews celebrate? They just party and they have a good time. I pointed out even in New Year's, that's where we really see it. In Rosh Hashanah, we're all in shul. It's a serious day. It's a holy day, and the non-Jews they're just out there partying. Next is Mila. The Rebbe gives a very fascinating thing. Why by Mila is there association with Sasin? Sasin is a higher, a more intense expression of happiness. You would think Mila is something where there's pain, and suddenly you go to any Jewish bris. It's a celebration. You have a whole spread, a whole meal is served. People are wishing Mazel Tov. What's the name? What's the name? Who's he named after? And it becomes a whole thing. By the non-Jews, a Mila is just ordinary surgery. Says the Rebbe, by Mila, it takes away one's worldly pleasures. So by a non-Jew, you take away his worldly pleasures. That's his whole life. He's going to be very disappointed. But by a Jew, you're taking away his worldly pleasures for the purpose of utilizing them for serving Hashem. So again, we see by the Mila, even with something where we do a bris and they do a bris, but we do it with Kedusha. Same thing is with Tefillin. Tefillin is a sign. It's like you're holding up a banner, I belong to Hashem. By the non-Jews too, they have their slogans and their banners. But the difference is, the non-Jews, it's a self-pride. But by a Jew, when we put on Tefillin, which Tefillin, all what it is just a hide of an animal, and we paint it black, not the most beautiful color, but it's precisely with that we pride ourselves that it's all for Hashem. We pride ourselves 100% with Hashem. We're not getting sidetracked with any things of beauty. And this, the Rebbe culminates this, and this is why these, again, going back to that point, where these four things of the Megillah, it's precisely those things where we find similarities to the non-Jews. And this is what Haman's decree was all about. His decree wasn't so much against, it didn't bother him when a Jew does spiritual stuff. Again, sitting in shul, davening, learning, saying Kaddish. He's not going to mess with that. Where is he going to mess? Where did it bother him? When a Jew does his physical stuff. And we find this today, interestingly enough, in the Reform movement. What do they have? It's all spiritual stuff. They have the Kaddish, and then when someone passes away, well, that's also Kaddish. They make sure, it's done in a proper Jewish burial. But when it comes to the physical stuff, sadly, keeping Shabbos and all the physical, there's not much emphasis on that. And the Rebbe ends up with this point that Haman, he came along and said, okay, I'm only gonna, all I'm telling you is in your physical stuff, you should be the same like us. But I'm not gonna mess with your spiritual. Says the Rebbe, no, it doesn't work that way. Because once you mess with the core essence of a Jew, you tell them that even in their mundane things, they should be like the Goyim. It's gonna end up eating away and rotting away at the core essence of a Yid.